Hello everybody, welcome back to the show. First off, let me apologize for my hiatus and really long time since my last video. I was sick and under the weather, and when I feel that way, it's just really hard for me to get up the enthusiasm to record a video. Plus, I'm sure that you guys don't want to hear me sniffling and sneezing it into your ear holes. So yeah, I didn't record to save you guys from having to listen to it. Or something like that. Yeah, we'll just go with that. Sounds good. Anyway, in today's episode, I want to work on generating some more power. Now, right now, I'm doing okay with my power. I don't really need more, but in the near future, I'm going to be building some more machinery, and it's going to require more power usage. So I'm going to go ahead and be proactive and get started with making some more power. In anticipation of that, I've had to expand my factory. So I've already done that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a turbine that I can attach to my big reactor. Now, right now, the big reactor, it burns yellorium fuel and it creates RF power directly. But the other way to use the reactor is to burn the yellorium fuel and create steam, pipe that steam into a turbine, and then the turbine, the spinning of the turbine, will generate RF power. And, oops, hit the wrong button. And generally when you do that, it will generate more RF power than just using the reactor by itself. It should, provided you've done everything correctly. So that's what I'm going to work on. Now, to build the turbine is built much the same way as the reactor. Let's go ahead and take a look at the inventory for it. Where am I at? There we go. It's basically the same in that it's a multi-block structure, except you use turbine pieces. So for example, there are turbine housings instead of reactor casings. There is turbine glass instead of reactor glass. There's a turbine controller instead of a reactor controller, etc. But most of these pieces all require some cyanite. There's two ways to get cyanite, or two basic ways to get cyanite. The most common way is when you burn off the yellorium fuel in your big reactor, it generates waste, and that waste takes the form of cyanite. When the waste in here gets to be 1,000 millibuckets, it will turn that into 1 ingot of cyanite, and I've been having that automatically piped into my chest here. The other way is if you have a sag mill or, pretty much anything that generates secondary output, you will occasionally see, let me see, there it is. When I process the yellorite ore, there is a 5% chance of getting some cyanite dust, which smelts into a cyanite ingot. So that's the other way to get it. Now, I've sadly already used up my cyanite in order to make the pieces that I think I'm going to need to build my turbine. But to give you an idea, to build this turbine, I went through almost 3 stacks of cyanite. So quite a bit of cyanite to do what I need to do. Plus, you have to have the cyanite to begin with, and that generally means you're going to build a big reactor and burn off some of that yellorium for fuel. Let's check on my yellorium. Oh, I'm doing really well, so I'm not worried about that. The next thing you're going to need is some plutonium. You don't need a lot of plutonium, but the turbine controller does require 2 plutonium ingots, and plutonium is really simple. All you need is 2 pieces of cyanite, 2 cyanite ingots I should say, and a bucket of water, and you're gonna make something called a cyanite reprocessor, which is this piece right here. You put in your 2 cyanite ingots in there and the bucket of water like that, and if you look it'll process that into a plutonium. And these cyanite reprocessors are not hard to make. Some reactor casings, yellorium fuel rods, etc. Stuff that you already had to make in order to build the reactor in the first place, and there you get a plutonium ingot. Now, as I said, I've already created all of the items I think that I'm going to need in order to build a turbine. It's going to go over here in this area that I've cleared out. So I'm going to go ahead and build the turbine, and I'll come right back. Okay, I'm putting in the turbine into the... I guess this is strange to say, but I'm putting the turbine inside of the turbine. Anyway, this outer part is the turbine casing, maybe, the outside of the turbine. And what I'm doing is I'm building the turbine inside of it. Now, when you make the turbine consists of this turbine shaft, which runs the entire length of the turbine, and then you have these rotor blades. They look like that. And they are what the steam interacts with, and they spin it. But then around the other end, around the shaft, you need to make a circle of some type of metallic block. And you can see here I'm using gold. That is because I have 3 choices available to me: iron, gold, and something from the mod itself that's called ludicrite. Where is it at? It's right here. Ludicrite. Ludicrite requires, each one of these requires a nether star, a couple ender pearls, plutonium. It's not necessarily difficult to make, maybe the emeralds, but with the Mark of the Falling Tower, I could get a lot of emeralds. I just didn't want to be bothered with it, to be honest with you. So I just went ahead and I'm going to use gold. Now, if you're, again, as I mentioned before when I talked about Big Reactor, if you're using thermal expansion, which most people, if you're using a mod pack, you're using thermal expansion, there are more metallic blocks available to you that are more efficient. So you're going to want to research it and figure it out. As you can see, I've had to make 4 circles, if you will, of the gold block. These are the coils. And the spinning of the shaft inside of the coil is what generates the RF power. So, and again, I am making my my turbine blades here now. So I'm going to finish this up and I'll be back. Okay, so the turbine is done. There you can see the rotor blades, the turbine blades, and the coils made up of gold rings around the turbine shaft. Over on this side, I've got the controller. This is what obviously turns it on and off. This is just a necessary block. That's the end of the shaft at the center point. I've got this part which is where the power comes out, and then I have where the steam will go in and where water, which is what happens when the steam is used up, I guess, will come out. Now, this of course has to be hooked up to the reactor, but the reactor has to be changed just a little bit. Before I get to that, I want to mention this turbine glass. Reactors have glass as well, so you can see inside them. I didn't use it when I made the big reactor because, well, there's nothing to see. It doesn't do anything. The turbine, though, is cool. We get to see it spinning around. So that's why I built this whole side here out of glass, just to be able to watch it spinning. It's really, really neat. But anyway, back to this. So the big reactor now is configured to produce RF. We don't want it to do that. We want it to produce steam, obviously. So the way we're going to do that, the way we need to retrofit this or change this, if you will, first of all, I'm going to go ahead and turn it off. Not necessarily a necessity, but just to keep things clean. And I have to remove these connections here. I'm just going to go ahead and remove all of these bits, if they'll come off, which for some reason that one didn't want to move. There we go. So here is the power port, which is where the RF comes out of the reactor. We won't be using that anymore, so I'm going to take that out. Oh, and I got a spillage, so I'll add that in there real quick. Ew, liquid life. Okay, and this was the redstone port, which controlled the redstone. We're no longer going to be using that either, so I'm going to take that out and put in that there. Now, I don't actually like the positioning of that, and I want to find out if I can put that on top. So I'm not sure if that's valid. I'll use turbine housings in order to give myself a jump up, and I wonder if I can do this. Can I take that out and take that out? Thank you. Go back up here, and I want to put, not that, reactor coolant port here, and reactor casing there. Does that work? Oh, it formed, so it seems to be accurate. And this is going to be in, yes, and this one here is going to be out. So use the Yeta wrench, there we go, to change it. Okay, so now I have that set up the way I want it. Take those back out. And if you go look now, you'll see that this interface looks very different, and that's because now it's been configured to produce steam. Now, before I tore this down, I did make a little note that I was generating 3,270 roughly 3000 RF per tick, and I was using 0.055 millibuckets of yellorium per tick. So I'm just keeping that as a reference so I can see how much better this turbine ends up being. So now that I have this set up, I need to do a couple of things. I need to provide the reactor with water, and then the reactor produces steam. The steam will come out of here, and I need to run that steam into here. Now, the other thing I'll be doing is I'll be running another pipe that takes the water from the turbine out of it and back into the reactor. That sort of recycles the steam back into water, water into steam, steam into water, water into steam. It forms like a nice circle. But it's actually a necessity as well, because it turns out that I don't really have a method of providing the reactor with enough water to keep up with what it needs. So it's actually going to be something I have to do. Anyway, let me make the conduits that I'm going to use for that and get it all hooked up. Okay, so I've added in some fluid conduits to move as I said, the steam from the reactor to the turbine, water from the turbine to the reactor. And what I just realized I forgot to make was the initial set of water, which I'm going to do with a reservoir. I'll be right back. Okay, I've put in a reservoir. Now, as I said, this reservoir by itself will not supply the reactor with enough water to keep up with the demands of the turbine. So that is why we have the cyclical system of water from the turbine coming back into the reactor. But it does help a little bit. So let's go ahead and get it flowing water into the reactor like that. Now, if we go to the reactor control here, you can see that this is filling up with water. This is your water storage area, if you will. This is your steam area, if you will, that goes back out. Now, if I turn this on, start it up. As I said, you notice it looks a little different here. We're creating the steam, and you'll notice that for the steam, it says it's 200 millibuckets per tick. And that's not entirely accurate, but it's what's happening because this is not yet on. So let's go over here. We'll look at this. You can see here we've got this is the steam that comes in. This is a sort of a storage area for the steam. When it turns it into water, that goes into this area. As usual, this is the energy storage buffer. This is what the turbine will store for energy. And then here is the rotor speed, which is how fast the rotor spins. Now, I just realized I'm also going to need to take the power out and put it into my capacitor bank. So, boy, I have not prepared. This is what happens when you're off from recording for a little while. You just come back and you're just not all that prepared for what you need to do, I think. I need to make some more conduits. I'll be right back. Oh, forgot that I had some that I took apart when I took from here, so I don't think I'm going to need to make any. So let's go ahead and do that. There we go. And I just want to check it. And this will be extract mode, always active. Okay, great. So this will take the power and put it into the capacitor bank. Excellent. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here and I'm going to turn on the reactor, activate it, so it's working. And I'm going to go over here and I'm going to turn on the turbine. And there you can see that it is spinning. Now, if we run back over here, you'll notice that this says that I'm producing 1,000 millibuckets of steam per tick. Before it said 200, but that's because the steam wasn't actually going anywhere, so it doesn't give an accurate number. Now it shows that I'm making 1,000 millibuckets per tick of steam. Now that is good because any singular turbine cannot accept more than 2,000 millibuckets of steam per tick. So I'm at half of that capacity. The other thing that's important is that you're going to want to have a rotor blade for every 25 millibuckets of steam. And you can see here with the rotor efficiency, rotor blades can only fully capture energy from 25 millibuckets of fluid per blade. So in this case with 1,000 millibuckets of steam, I needed 40 blades. And that's how many blades I put in there. Oh, now we can see it spinning. See the steam coming in, thing is spinning. There we go. If we look back over here, you can see we're already generating power. I'm already at 1,300 RF per tick. And here you can see the speed of the turbine. Now the speed of the turbine is important, and you can see here that your rotor speed is best either at 900 or 1800 RPM. And if you go over 2000 RPM, I see there it says speeds over 2000 PM, but they do mean 2000 RPM, trust me on this. If you get over 2000 RPM, you're going to end up with an explosion. Now, when it says that they perform best at 900 or 1800, you're going to want to try to optimize things so that you are either running your rotor at 900 RPM or 1800 RPM. 1800 RPM is going to be better. It's going to give you more power than 900 RPM. But you're not going to want like 1200 RPM. You're going to be worse than 900 or 1800. So you want to get it somewhere in there. And that just takes a lot of messing around, unless you go online to a website that gives you all the answers. But it depends on the speed of the blades, which is dependent upon how much steam you're getting, and what coils you use. In this case, I'm using the gold coils. That's all going to be factors in that. Over here with the things, obviously this turns on or turns off the turbine. And what this does, you can disengage the coils. Disengaging the coils means it will spin up faster, but it won't generate any power. And so if you want it to just shoot up to the maximum speed that you want it to be at very quickly, then you would disengage the coils. Now you might see here that the power is going down, and this is what I was talking about. Right in here, this green area is right where the 900 is. We're now over that, and so see, it's going down again. So you would want it to be either in the 900 in the green area or the 1800, which will be a green area up here, which is what this should go up to if I've planned this correctly. But yes, if you're outside of that green area, you're not running at the efficiency that you need to generate the most amount of power. What else can I tell you about this thing? Is it generating RF power? It should be. I don't see it going in there yet, but hopefully it will eventually. I'm probably using power faster than I'm generating it at this point in time. So there you go. The turbine is spinning, and ooh, I just thought of something. Wait a minute. I've got to try this now. My curiosity is too great. It's raining. Why do you rain when I want to perform experiments? Well, I'll teach you, silly rain. Okay, let's go. Let's go over here. Well, let's fly. Boo, 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 boo. Go up here. And yeah, my drone is charging. Let's get one of you guys. And let's go back down here. And all right, let's deactivate the turbine. Yes, okay. And then let's take out a piece of glass. Come on. Come on. Ah. There we go. All right. And boop. Okay. Strike.
No, Mr. Bond. I expect you to die. Activate.
Well, you know, in retrospect, while my initial... Even my dog is unhappy with this result. As I was going to say, in retrospect, while my initial thought was that this would somehow result in a spectacular death scene of this Martian Mafia member, I now realize that it could have been that the Martian Mafia would have exploded and damaged all of my reactor, or my turbine, I should say, and then I probably would have been very upset because this was very difficult and hard to build. Well, not difficult, but it used a lot of parts that it used all that cyanite. So maybe I'm glad that it didn't work quite the way I had intended. So let's see where we're at. So we're spinning up our RPM. As you can see, we're generating RF power. I'm going to wait until this gets up to a more maximum level, and I'll come back and show you what I got. Okay, remember when I was just using the big reactor, I was creating 3,270 RF per tick? Over here on my turbine now, I'm making 3,300 and it's still climbing RF per tick. I'm only at 1,500 RPM and I'm already generating almost basically 3,500 RF per tick. And the RPM is still climbing because the rotor blades are still getting up to their speed. This will get up to pretty close to the 1,800 if I've done everything correctly. Remember, you just want to make sure that your rotor blades aren't going to go over the 2,000 RPM. You want to get them in that sweet spot, the green zones, either here or the one that will be up here. That's going to be your most efficient. But whatever you do, don't let the rotor speed get above 2,000. You will regret it. So my turbine, the speed of my turbine is still climbing. It's not climbing as fast as it was at the lower RPMs, but it is still climbing, but it's climbing rather slowly. One trick that I use sometimes especially when I'm testing, but you can also use it in doing things. Remember when I said when you can disengage the coils, the rotor's going to spin faster, but it won't generate any power. You can do that to increase your RPMs to a certain level. So, for example, I'm going to disengage this and wait till it gets to 1,700 RPM, and then I'm going to re-engage the coils now. And you can see that the RPMs are still climbing. So I haven't hit the maximum that the turbine's at. I'm going to do it again and let it get up to, say, 1,800 RPM. And you can do this to get up to certain levels quicker if you want to. And there I'm at 1,800. Now you can see it's going down. So now basically what I know is that it's not going to go over 1,800 RPM. The spinning of this turbine is somewhere between 1,700 and 1,800. And that's okay. Again, I just wanted to make sure it doesn't go above 2,000. Plus, I'm in the green zone, which is good enough for me. Yes, maybe I could tweak things a little bit to get it to more accurately closer to the 1,800, but honestly, this is good enough. Look what I'm generating, 6,600 RF per tick. That is really cool. I am essentially generating twice as much power as I was before. Now, if we go look, you will see that I am burning 0.079 millibuckets per tick. So let's go ahead and grab another sign and we can compare things here. We don't really need to, but I like to put the numbers in front of me. Makes it a little bit easier. Let me go look at this again. I'm going to call it, now I won't know what it will be until it stops, fluctuating and it will get to where it's at. But I'm just going to call it 6,600 RF per tick. Put the sign here, 6.60 thousand RF F per tick. And what was it, 0.080 millibuckets per tick? Was it 0.080? 0.078, close enough. The point is that I'm generating twice as much RF per tick, but I'm not using twice as much yellorium per tick. I think that's fairly obvious. So not only does this generate more RF per tick, but it's going to generate more RF per ingot of yellorium. So again, with the big reactors and with the turbines, this is a situation where you get to customize things how you want. Maybe you want to burn faster because you have a ton of yellorium and you can generate much more power, and you're not as concerned about how much you get per tick, or to get more RF per tick. Or maybe you want to burn the power slower, get fewer RF per tick, but in exchange your yellorium will last longer. It's up to you. It's one of the nice things about the big reactor. And as you can see, I am filling up again my capacitor bank. That's working out really well. I was without power for a little while. Well, not completely without power, but I was low on power. But I'm filling up my capacitor bank. I actually think I'm going to expand my capacitor bank and make it a little bit bigger, just because I can. Maybe, in a sense, just to fill out this wall because I can. Hello. Hello. Are you gonna... Maybe you're my engineer. You're the engineer. No, that doesn't work. You're my sworn enemy. Anyway, now... One more thing I want to mention about adding the turbine. As you saw here, when you shut off the turbine and then turn it back on, you have to wait for the turbine to get back up to speed. And so it takes a while to get up to this 1800 RPM and thus to get to the maximum amount of energy that you're producing. That could be said to be one benefit of running your turbine at 900 RPM. It won't take as long to get up to that speed. But the problem is, or the key thing is, that because it takes time to get up to that speed, you basically don't want to deactivate your turbine. And that means you need to constantly provide it with steam, which also means that you're basically not going to ever deactivate your reactor. So to set up a system where you said, like I had before, where when my capacitor bank was full, I could turn off my reactor, that's a lot harder to do in this particular circumstance. Now, what you could do is you could deactivate the coils so they're not generating any RF per tick. But that really doesn't do you a lot of good because you're still burning the yellorium here in your reactor. You're burning the yellorium, creating the steam. So the fact that you're not using the steam doesn't really matter. There are ways that you can manage this better, and you can do that primarily. I think you have to use ComputerCraft. Direwolf 20 did in his videos. He had a fairly extensive ComputerCraft setup to do this with, but that's really difficult to do. And so without those kinds of mods as added, and I don't have those kinds of mods in there, there really becomes no way for me to say, let's turn things off when I'm full of power. So basically, this is going to run all the time. And that was one reason why earlier I wanted to check on my yellorium status and make sure that I had enough. So anyway, that's going to do it. Let's go see. I don't know. I didn't keep track of what day and time it was when I started, but I think it's been a few days, a few Minecraft days that it took me to do this, and that's okay. Most of it was set. I did a lot of pre-setup. Actually, while I was sick, I was doing a lot of stuff as far as expanding this out and making the parts and doing some research on what I was going to use to build this with. So that's going to do it for this episode. Leave me a comment and tell me what you think about the turbine. Did I do it right? Did I do it wrong? What's your opinions on it? Or if that doesn't interest you, leave me a comment and tell me about a time that you were sick. I hate being sick. Does everybody hate being sick? I think everybody hates being sick. If you like being sick, leave me a comment and tell me about that, because I would find that really, really fascinating. That's going to do it for this episode. Thank you so much for joining me. I really do appreciate it. I will see you next time.